Transformers, everybody knows what that is, and when I initially was talking to people about working on it, every dude that you run into on the street would get visibly excited.
It's hard to imagine when you do it as big as you do in the first one, how are you gonna do it bigger in the second one?
The nice thing about Transformers is it's almost anything you can imagine. They can turn into anything, and that's the fun of the movie, and that's the fun of the movie for me.
I actually read a treatment or an outline before I got the actual script. And even then, I thought, oh my God, this is going to make the first one look like a margarine commercial.
It was certainly scale-wise the biggest thing I'd ever shot. We had every bit of equipment known to filmmaking multiplied by a factor of 10.
I don't know what it's like to be a man and be full of testosterone, but when those fly over, it made me feel very masculine and aggressive, like you want to just punch someone.
It's huge. I mean, it's concussive. It hurts your head.
Dude, it's the biggest thing ever.
You know, when we shot the first one, you never know what the film is going to turn out like. We're out here shooting all this stuff, and you don't know what the robots are going to look like. You don't know if it's going to feel real or not.
Nobody could imagine what real live robots would look like. They didn't think we could do it. Their first instinct was, oh, you couldn't possibly make 30-foot robots look real.
It felt like it was a big one. It just did. From the trailers to how far in advance they started marketing the film and just everything. It just felt like something really big was coming. It felt big.
You know, with all the explosions and all the everything going on, it felt like it was really real. And sure enough, when I saw it in the theater, I was really impressed by it.
The theaters that I went to when I was really like low key, wear my hat and go to the theaters with my friends, people would be shouting and clapping, and it was an event. And they, the first time they see Optimus and that music goes and everybody in the theater starts going crazy, you realize the amount of passion and love that these people have for this toy, and now what they have for the film. It's really powerful.
It was the single most, I think, amazing experience we've ever had sitting in a theater. Just listening to so many crowds roar at jokes and at the action sequences, and it couldn't have been more satisfying for us, so we were really thrilled.
I was actually shocked about the release of the first one. I think, what this movie does, Transformers, there's a kid in everybody. It kind of releases that in you. People want to feel young when they see a movie like this, and that's kind of what it does, I think.
There are particularly a couple of elements that stood out for me and made it really appealing. I think Shia's performance is phenomenal. He really brought so much to the role, and he's very engaging.
And Megan Fox. I mean, what are those shots? Megan is constantly running in slow motion. And, those shots of her leaning over the car and everything, I mean, that had to have had something to do with the success of the movie, right?
I think the decision that we made early on in the script to find a very basic human emotion to tie the story to, boy gets car, gets girl. Everybody could relate to that rite of passage.
I think Michael did an amazing job of working with great art people and with ILM and all those companies that really sort of pushed it to another level, and I think ultimately it worked.
I've never been a big fan of CG movies. There's always that issue of the CG work not really embedding itself well into the action. And Transformers was one of the first films that I thought really blended fantastically well. They did a phenomenal job.
I didn't see it coming, and it blew up, and it was a huge success. It far surpassed my expectations of what it was gonna be.
I think we were all caught off guard a little bit. You know, when you first saw the film, you knew Michael had done something special with the idea. But you can never anticipate how the audience is going to react. And the fact that not only did they react so positively initially, but over time, the anecdotal evidence of how much they love it is so clear to all of us, whether it's kids coming up to you or whether it's parents or, you know, anybody. It's amazing to me the number of people who today still talk about it like it was just released a few months ago.
I think everybody knew it was going to be popular, but to that degree, no, I don't think anyone could have foreseen how massively successful it was.
When we were making the first one, I thought for sure there would not be a second one, but after it came out and it made so much money, all of us obviously sat back and said, okay, when is the second one coming around?
Originally, we did struggle. We didn't have a story in our heads of exactly what story to tell. And we had a writer's strike pending. You know, the Writers Guild was going on strike, and you know, so that made it pretty tricky. And the original writers, Bob and Alex, said, look, we'd love to do this. We love this property. We don't really know what the next story should be.
We hesitated on doing the movie for a while because we needed that big idea that made the movie feel really worth doing. And one of the things that we found in looking through the lore and also in asking ourselves what sequels we loved as kids was the fact that there's literally a chapter in the Transformers book that talks about the 20 years of Transformers called The Many Lives and Deaths of Optimus Prime. It struck us that if we were able to do something as horrific as kill Optimus Prime, pin the responsibility of that on Sam's shoulders, it would really fuel his quest as a hero to make right to the mistake that he had made. And we also knew that if we could make the resurrection of Optimus Prime be an incredible journey that required putting pieces together, if we get the audience to the end of that journey, they would be so satisfied because experiencing both the loss of this character that you love and then bringing him back to life would be so uplifting that it felt like the perfect place to get to in the third act. And that's how we ended up coming to the idea of doing that. But we knew the strike was looming and that there was a finite period of time that we were going to have to develop the story, then we were going to have to stop, and then the minute the strike was over, we were going to have to bang through the script very, very fast. And it felt like a pretty daunting prospect. So we said to the studio that we really needed to bring in someone else to be able to deliver on the timeline that they wanted it done by.
When it was unclear whether they were going to be able to work on the sequel, I got a call from DreamWorks asking if I had any interest in working on the sequel. And I said, well, I did, but I thought Alex and Bob might be writing it. And they said, well, we're not sure if we're going to be writing it. By all means, go ahead and take the meetings on the project. And by the end of it all, Alex and Bob and I had all decided that the way we could make this work was to all write on it together.
Well, at the very beginning, Alex Kurtzman and Bob Orsi and Aaron Kruger sat down with myself and Lorenzo Bonaventura and certainly Michael Bay to try to figure out where we go from here.
We started out at the very beginning with Michael saying that he wanted this movie to be an adventure. He wanted to go places with the story.
I was just instantly drawn to the idea of they've been here a long time. I'm like, let's start looking at some of the big monuments.
So we began with looking at a lot of archaeological sites, and you know, within just a few weeks, Michael sort of settled in on Egypt and on Jordan, and just on the tremendous history of human civilization that part of the world embodies. And he felt like it would be really representative of the immense history to the Transformer civilization that we wanted to explore in the story of this movie.
There is a lot of mythology behind the Transformers toys and the brand. It's not like a lot of other properties that they turn into movies. You know, it wasn't a comic book originally, it was a toy, but subsequently there was a lot of stories that were told about those robots.
One of the things we wanted to do in this film was open the floodgates a little bit and tell the audience that there is an entire universe out there, not only of Transformer characters, but of Transformer history. And there are chapters within books of the story of the Civil War on Cybertron and the story of where Transformers came from and how they were created. And there are all sorts of stories within this universe which we could explore. And the trick is really to make that mythology work while maintaining the human story of the characters we've come to know and love on Earth.
The first movie was so much about this innocent kid wanting to get the girl and wanting the car to get the girl and then finding himself inadvertently the center of an alien war and rising to that challenge. And it felt to us like all good sequels put their main character in some very, very difficult predicament where they have to choose between being a hero and being normal. And we gravitated toward that basic idea for Sam.
So that was the first thing we focused on, is what kind of rite of passage can we find that, again, has a universality to it, even if you didn't go through the specific one. And the one we chose was that sort of process of becoming a young adult. And that sense, sort of the notion of responsibility.
The next thing that came to mind was leaving home and going to college. And we thought it would be interesting to see him on his own. Who is he outside of these relationships? How does he see himself, and who does he want to be?
In the meantime, the strike was, you know, coming down upon us, and we were sort of left with basically a very rough outline of what those guys had talked about. And it was Michael Bay sitting there in a room by himself saying, well, we can do this. We can, you know, while those guys are out, we're going to figure this out because we've got to prep this movie.
I kept dreaming while they were on strike. And granted, we had a, I think, 13-page outline. And that was enough to start prepping.
The first couple of months we spent really focusing on designing about 70 robots.
We have a team of guys, and we sit there, and I start spitting out ideas of different types of robots.
Michael would come in one day and be like, what about this guy? Or we would do this guy, and same time meeting with GM, seeing what new vehicles they had come out, stuff that they were really itching to put into the movie. Certain vehicles, you know, Michael would either say yay, nay, or on it, and we'd go from there.
General Motors cars, they've been very gracious in offering the filmmakers a range of cars and giving Michael some unprecedented access. The kinds of things that we've been able to do with the Camaro in the first movie, I mean, I think we're iconic. The kinds of things you're going to see, whether it's the Volt or some of the other new cars, the new Corvette, you know, are just really incredible. The designs are incredible, the cars are incredible, and the characters they become are also incredible because we apply, you know, kind of Hasbro Transformer magic to it, and they become these great characters.
My process usually starts very sketchy. I do a really, really rough silhouette because I think at the end of the day with character design, the key thing is to get a silhouette that sort of has the right personality because, you know, that's sort of the quickest read that you have on an object or on a character is sort of how big are the shoulders, how strong do the arms look, how wide is the chest, you know, does it look like it's athletic, does it look like it's slow, does it look like it's armored, does it look like it's a really quick little scout type creature or character. So you can start to feel that out very quickly with a silhouette. After a loose sketch is done, I would then work that into a more full-blown illustration, which means adding, you know, more realistic lighting in the way that it's painted, taking photography of the car or the pieces of the real thing that it needs to turn into, and applying those from photo scrap over the sort of rough design in Photoshop, and then ultimately applying the level of polish to what is just illustrated that makes it tie in with the photography. So it's sort of a collage process between a rough, you know, intention of the massing of the robot, and then adding in real parts, and then shining it all up to where it looks like a decent, you know, not photorealistic, but a, you know, a squint photoreal impression of what the robot's really going to look like. And at that point, you present a first version, and then the changes come.
Let me explain something.
Yeah.
John Simmons is under he says, I'm under the robot scrotum.
Yeah.
I want to do a shot where he looks up when he's trying to know where we are. And I want two, what are those construction wrecking balls kind of hanging a little bit? I'm dead serious. Like a crane thing and then like another wrecking ball, kind of just clink. That's a funny laugh. That is a funny laugh. He looks up and he says, I'm right?
I'm not a car guy. A lot of the nuts and bolts of these things are a mystery to me. But in a way, it was a benefit because applying the logic of someone who knows what every single piece inside of a car does and looks like, and it looks like when you pull the case off and you expose the gears and all that. If I had had that kind of a mind when approaching this kind of, collage-like sculptural way that we designed the robots, I think it would have actually slowed things down. So in my ignorance, I'll do things like have two sets of something in a robot because you want to use it on both legs, where there's only one of them in a car. But literally, I neither know nor care. so that sort of freed me up to look at the design and sculptural qualities of these car parts and use them, as a texture and not worry so much about the literal, aspect of it, which of course creates trouble for the people who have to make the toys and for the people who have to figure out the transformations in the movie. But we kind of knew that going in, that we wouldn't have the time to make robots that would look really, really cool and also be engineered properly. To do all of that elegantly and perfectly is a whole different kind of design process. That's like NASA type design where you need a huge team of people and it takes longer. So our goal was to come up with stuff that looked cool enough to satisfy the director, because at the end of the day he wants the stuff to look cool. And then it was, to be honest, somebody else's problem to figure out how to transform it.